who's gonna win? Traeger, Oklahoma Joe, best steak. Let's go. We're gonna find out today, what cooks a steak better, Traeger or Oklahoma Joe? We're gonna crank these up to 225 and reverse sear these. We're gonna pull them off at 120 and we're gonna let them rest while we bring these up to a high heat so we can get a final sear on them. As we jump into this cook, a couple quick show notes. If you watch the opening video of this series, Traeger versus Oklahoma Joe, you know I mentioned that the Oklahoma Joe runs a lot hotter than the preset settings. So I put it on 225, but my thermometer right now is saying 288. It's been all the way up to 300. So this steak should reverse sear a lot faster. Traeger, I have a thermometer in there also. I have it at 225. The thermometer is reading 210 to 212. So there's a very smaller temperature variance versus the Oklahoma Joe. So we're gonna cook the temp, which is about 120. Then we're gonna pull and then we're gonna let it rest. We're gonna let it rest for about 10 to 15 minutes as these things come up to temperature and get to a high heat. So we're gonna let this actually rest in between our sear. When you do that, you're allowed to pull it right off after your sear and start slicing and serving. right, guys, obviously you saw that the Oklahoma Joe was able to get a huge flame going and get a real sear on. So it does act as both a smoker and a true get some char on that steak, which is pretty impressive. Traeger definitely had more smoke rolling throughout the entire cook versus the Oklahoma Joe was once again running hot and got that temperature up, which was great. It was a fast cook, but there wasn't as much smoke. So it's going to come down to the taste test to see which had more smoke. And obviously for the sear, Oklahoma Joe gets that because it clearly had a fantastic sear on it, while Traeger once again hit 450. I wish they would just say, like, look, we don't really sear. Let's be honest about it. We don't really put a sear on a steak unless you start removing parts halfway through your cook. So it's a smoker, leave it as a smoker, and finish off the sear as best as you can. All right, let's stop talking, let's start eating. First, Traeger. I've had a bunch of Traeger steaks before. Once again, really good, lots of flavor. The seasoning, Neil Sarap, I mean, you can never go wrong there. Smoke, lots of smoke flavor, but there is no crisp char. All right, round two, Oklahoma Joe. Let's see. All right, this tastes much more like a Weber style steak where you reverse sear it. When I did my Traeger versus Weber long time ago, you can see that video right there. You can see the indirect heat versus direct heat right over the coals. This is what this reminds me of. I'm not picking up a ton of smoke flavor, but I'm tasting a lot more beefiness, like where the Traeger, the smoke flavor kind of mellowed out the beefy flavor, versus this, the beefy flavor really runs through and that charcoal crust. So trying to determine which one's better, I mean, it's really what you're in the mood for. This isn't going to be a series about copping out and everybody's a winner, right? No, somebody's not getting a trophy. Don't worry about that. But as far as a smoker goes and getting that smoke flavor, the Traeger wins. But as far as if you're looking for crust and that more traditional cook, like a Weber, where you'd hit, but this time you'd hit set it and forget it, then it's Oklahoma Joe. So as far as smoke flavor goes, I really barely picked up any on the Oklahoma Joe and picked up a good amount on the Traeger. I was kind of expecting that. And then for the Oklahoma Joe, the crust was there, and just like we thought, the Traeger, anybody that's had a Traeger knew there really wasn't a snowball's chance in hell that it was going to put on a solid crust. Sorry, Traeger, it's just not going to happen. But enjoy it. You got the smoke flavor. Both steaks, final opinion, do I have a winner? No, I've kind of done this before. Like I said, it's like the Weber versus the Traeger. They're both fantastic steaks. It's just, what are you looking more for? Are you looking more for smoke flavor? Go Traeger. Are you looking more for that crust and more beefy flavor? Oklahoma Joe won. There you have it. I'm going to leave it there. Pro tip. Before we get into the pro tip of the day, I just want to remind you, if you like this series and you're new to YouTube, go in the description, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, but also look for the playlist. The playlist, Traeger versus Oklahoma Joe, will have all the videos that we're covering on Traeger versus Oklahoma Joe. The pro tip of the day, the question I get asked all the time, should I let my meat rest? That's right. Should you let the protein you're cooking rest? I get it for pork ribs, beef ribs, brisket, pork butt, and steaks. Yes. The universal answer to that question is yes, you should let it rest. If it's pork ribs, you should let it rest for 20 to 30 minutes. If it's steak, minimum 10 to 15 minutes. The thicker the steak, the longer you might want to let it rest. Brisket, we're talking up to 2 hours, 3. You really want to let it rest. So all meats you cook, even chicken, you can and should let it rest. even pork butt, you should let it rest. You guys, as always, have been great, and I hope you have a very awesome week. See ya.